Hey everyone, Wayne Fox here. So I'm in the middle of doing a video about my journey through capture and talk about, from film to digital, all the various formats I've used. And the main focus of the video is about comparing film format sizes and why large format was pretty important back with film versus sensor sizes, and also why the technology in the camera wasn't nearly as important in film as it is in digital. Just kind of a nostalgic trip through my I started in 1972 with my first camera, and I've been a professional photographer for 50 years. But in the meantime, while I'm shooting this video, I can't clear this off till I finish the video, and I got something delivered today. So I thought I'd just pop it open. I've done this will be loud. I've done a review of every MacBook Pro since the 2015 and compared the speed tests, and of course, I couldn't resist but getting a brand new M2 Max MacBook Pro. And so I thought I don't really need to open the box because it looks exactly like the MacBook Pro that I have. But I thought I'd do my speed test that I've done on all the others. I'm going to add a couple of tests to that because I'm really curious how some of the things compare to my Mac Pro versus my M1 Max Mac Pro versus my M2 Max Pro MacBook Pro. So that'll video be coming out in a couple weeks, but I thought I'd just kind of do a quick intro. Gee, the box looks similar, but yeah, they've gotten rid of all the plastic and it's a little bit different. Anyway, I'll see you in a couple weeks and we'll talk about what I think of this new M2 Max MacBook Pro. Well, it's been about a month since I got my new M1 Max MacBook Pro. Say that real fast. It seems faster. Now, that might be buyer's bias. I spent quite a bit of money, so maybe I wanted it to be faster. But it does seem faster, and in some things, it seems quite a bit faster. I've done quite a bit of work in Lightroom, done quite a bit of work in Photoshop, done a lot of work in a program called ScreenFlow, which is the program I actually use to capture my videos. So I actually am pretty anxious to run my series of tests. I've got 6 Lightroom tests. I've added another test, a ScreenFlow test, and I thought, what I want to do is retest the Mac Pro. That's kind of the reference machine. My goal was to find a laptop that was at least comparable in speed and performance, because I was really tired of having a laptop that was slower and then having to move it all over to a desktop when I got home. And the M1 Max did fine. It's in most things, it's definitely as fast or close enough that it's not a big deal. So that's all I've used since I bought it. I haven't used the Mac Pro for anything, but I still have it. So it's kind of the reference machine. And I'm going to retest the M1 Max MacBook Pro. And the reason I want to test those two machines from scratch is we have some pretty significant changes, and I just want to make sure everything's apples to apples. For example, we're on OS 13.2 now, which is Ventura Mac OS. Does it make a difference? Are there anything they've done under the hood that has helped? We're on Adobe Lightroom 12.2, and we're on Adobe Photoshop 24.2, which is 2023 Photoshop. We definitely know Adobe's done quite a bit, and I assume they've continually tweaked their optimization for the M series of processors, so that might have made a difference. So I really can't compare this machine with the current software and operating system against something I tested about 18 months ago on an older operating system and a not as optimized version of Adobe software. And I think even ScreenFlow has come out with a new version since then, which is more optimized. So I've already run all those tests on my 2019 Mac Pro. It's a 12-core processor. I've got 2 GPU cards in it and 96 gigs of RAM. I've run the tests on the M1 Max, which has the 10-core processor and the 32-core GPU. And this M1 Max has 64 gigs of RAM, unlike the one I used last year, because I did upgrade it to a 4 terabyte bottle. And then I have those results, and now we're going to run those tests on the new M2 Max MacBook Pro. We'll see if it's faster. So before we get started on test 1, really quick, let me just show you the SSD speeds. You can see the 2019 Mac Pro was only about 3,000 megabytes per second, about half the speed of the M1 and the M2 Max. Both of those are right around 6,000 or better. The M2 Max is slightly better than the M1 as far as the read speed. Both are way more speed than Lightroom or Photoshop needs. I believe if you're running 4K or 8K video feeds and things like that, yeah, that speed gets critical. But I think at this point, the SSDs are far more capable of handling anything that Lightroom and Photoshop can show at them. So I don't think the SSD speed really has much of a bearing on the test that I'm running today. Maybe on the ScreenFlow test, it's hard to say on that one. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so this first test is to get some files into Lightroom. I've got a folder of 500 Sony A7r4 files. I've used the same set of files each time. We're gonna bring them off of, I've got a SSD RAID down here, and that's the same device I've used to bring them in on each test. Now it's faster than an SD card, so the test is only valid as a comparison. If it's a machine's faster than the other, if you use them from an SD card, it's definitely going to be slower than I'm going to get. But anyway, let's go find the files. We have, let's hit import, and they're located right here. We're going to copy them over. Notice here I've got the preview set to embedded in Sidecar. We're going to find a folder to put them in. Let's see how we do. Okay, that test is done. Let's first of all, let's take a look at the 2019 Mac Pro. That took 32 seconds. The 2021 M1 Max took 34 seconds. And as you can see, the new M2 Max only took 30 seconds. Now, none of those are significant. Really, there's not a lot of difference. So before I get into test 2, I thought it'd be sort of interesting to just see how well we can do if we're using a standard SD card, a more typical situation. So I've got the same 500 Sony files on this SanDisk Extreme Pro 170 megabytes per second card. Let's throw it in, and let me just do that same import on those. Well, that's all done. It took a while. Just take a look. So as you can see, both machines took a lot longer, over 5 minutes, substantially longer. Obviously, when you're importing, the speed of the import is pretty much strictly based on the ability of the device you're copying from to spit the data out. SD card is slow. SSD I've got down here is fast. Just tells me that that process is really not limited by Lightroom. It's strictly a function of the operating system and the devices that you've got hooked up. Just for curiosity, I thought, well, what about if I just did it from the Finder? Would it be faster to do it from the Finder than import? And as you can see, the Finder takes just as long to import. So there's really no point in copying from your Finder and then doing another step in Lightroom. It can all be just one simple step, and boom, it's actually safer, less risk of messing something up. I've got a whole video plan on that. I've done it for years now. It's a way simpler way to import your files. Anyway, enough about that. Let's get on with test 2. So in test 2, we're going to build a one-to-one preview of all of those files. Now, that preview is not used in the develop module, but I like to make those previews in advance because that way if I need to zoom in to check focus, it's much faster than if Lightroom does it dynamically. Now, normally I have those set to be deleted after about a month because they do take up quite a bit of room, although nowadays the hard drive storage is more than adequate. Anyway, let's just go here. We're going to select all files again. We're going under the library. We're just going to say previews, build one-to-one previews. And this will take quite a bit of time. Let's see, we've got my, there we go. Now we can kind of see it. So I'll be back in, I don't know how long it's going to take. I know how long it took on this one. Let's just go see what it did on the other computers while this is running. So as you can see, it took 4 minutes and 43 seconds on the 2019 Mac Pro. Took 7 minutes and 45 seconds on the M1 Max. Okay, that test is all done. And let's just take a look at the results. And as you can see, it took 10 seconds longer than the Mac Pro. I think this will be the only test I run that the Mac Pro actually won. The thing that's interesting about this, though, and what I don't understand, if I look at last year's test of the M1 Max, you see it took 5 minutes and 48 seconds. Very similar to the results of the other two machines. This year it took 7 minutes and 45 seconds. And I can't explain that. I ran this test 4 times on the M1 because it didn't make any sense to me. I don't know what's changed in Lightroom, or if it's in Ventura, or just something, weird anomaly with my computer. But why a year ago the same test was 30–40% faster, I don't know. Okay, for test 3, we're going to export all 500 files. I guess the tests I've done really lend themselves to somebody that does a lot of shooting, like a wedding photographer. Really, some of the things that take a lot of time. Most time in Lightroom, there's no delay, no slack. I mean, on either machine, you're just doing this stuff. But when you start doing things to multiple files, that's when things start to slow down. So let's export these files. There's been no modifications to them. They're just the files as they were brought in. We'll do a select all. We're going to go File, Export. We're going to export them as a 4,000 long file, so we have to resize them, and we're going to make them a JPEG sRGB at quality 60, so we're also going to compress them. All right, let's hit export, and let's find a place that we can put them. And new folder, test, export, create, and choose, and here we go. Okay, that test is finished. Let's first look at the 2019 Mac Pro and last year's M1 Max. As you can see, the M1 Max was actually quite a bit faster. I don't know, that's about 15% faster. The M2 Max, even a little faster than that. It's probably about, I would say, around 10% faster than the M1 Max. So some speed gains there. That's not significant. I don't think any of these new processors are going to give us the big jumps that we saw in the past. A new machine with a complete new design, for example, if they could figure out how to put an Ultra inside of one of these machines. But anyway, it's a nice result. Okay, so with test 4, what we're going to do is we're going to take the first file. If you look here on my first file and to go to the develop module, you'll see that I've got a bunch of dust spots I've put in there just randomly all over the place. I've made a bunch of changes to the overall photograph in the global change department, and we've added some gradient masks. So we've done some work on it, and now we're going to export the same 500 files. Now, because of the work that's done on it, it will take longer. The more things we do to a file, the longer it takes Lightroom to render that out. Anyway, let's do the same export. We're going to file, export, and the same quality settings, sRGB 60, 4,000 pixels wide. And let's just throw them back in the same place as we did the other one. And then we'll better do a new folder because otherwise it'll want to overwrite all of them. So we'll just leave it that. And let's see how long that takes. Like I said, this will take quite a bit longer. Okay, that test is all finished. It took quite a bit more time. Let's take a look at the two machines from last year. You can see that last year the M1 Max was a little slower than the Mac Pro. It's one of those tests that the Mac Pro actually won. But this year you can see that that's a totally different story now. The new M2 Max is substantially faster. I'm looking at that thing and it's 35% or so faster than the Mac Pro, and more importantly, it's about 40% faster than last year's M1 Max. So we can see now, we're starting to see a few tests where the M2 Max is really showing that it does have some nice performance. Okay, so the next test, test 5, is one I'm pretty excited to run because it's something I do a lot. Most of the time I'm shooting panel stitches. I like to make sure I get all the detail I can. And so a lot of times, even with a 100 megapixel camera, I'm going to shoot a 5 to 7 shot stitch with my camera vertical. And so stitching those is, time consuming sometimes, especially if you shoot 8 or 10 different stitches during a morning and you need to go stitch them all. Now, Lightroom's batch stitch mode is pretty awesome. So we're going to give it a try. What I've got here is I've got 5 different panels I shot. You can see they average between 7 and 12 images, or I think one was maybe 6, yeah. And I've already put them in stacks, so we're ready to go. So all we have to do is select all of them, right click, and tell it to photo merge, and it will batch merge that whole set. This will take some time. So while that's finishing, let's just take a look. You can see that the 2019 Mac Pro took 5 minutes and 34 seconds, and last year's M1 Max MacBook Pro was about 25% faster than that, only 3 minutes and 50 seconds. So it was a nice improvement. I've actually really enjoyed having that extra speed, especially because now I can do my panels while I'm on the road. Sometimes I wait to do them when I get home because it just would take too long. Now the batch mode makes it easy because, like I said, I can run it in batch mode, and if there's 10 or 20 or 30 of them, I can go have dinner or something while it's running. But anyway, okay, it looks like the test is done. Let's take a look at the result. As you can see, the 2023 M2 was a little bit faster than last year, but not much. I think this function is very optimized in Lightroom right now. I don't think it's as optimized in Photoshop, but Lightroom is really good and actually really fast at panel merges. These were 80 megapixel files that I was giving it from an IQ 180 back. So big files, and yet it was able to merge all of those in under 4 minutes. So now let's get to Photoshop. I've been using a benchmark from Puget Systems. I don't actually remember the name of it, but they develop high-end workstations on Windows specifically for Photoshop. And so they came up with this benchmark to see how their various systems they built stack up. And I know they've run it on the Macs in the past. I found that the current version wasn't too reliable on the M series of processors. So I've actually reverted to their version 8 beta, which to me I think is one of the better ones. And so it's really not relevant because I think last year I was maybe running it on a different one. But I tried the current one and it was just not very good. So, but we're just trying to compare these three, so it'll be a good apples to apples. The final result won't really compare to the ones on their website. They actually publish a lot of different numbers from systems. People will even contribute their numbers from their systems that they buy. So anyway, let's go ahead and run that. It's pretty easy. You just load up Photoshop. You run it as a script. So we just go to Scripts, Browse, and I've loaded it onto my local SSD. It's right here, PugetBench, and we just have to run that. Now this takes a while. To be honest, it's a pretty slow process. What it does 21 different tests, and then it does it 3 iterations of that. So overall, it took a while. In fact, while this is running, let's take a look at how it did with the older machines. I did those last week. So you can see that the 2019 Mac Pro took 31 minutes compared to 22 minutes. So last year's M1 Max was a nice, about a 30% in a speed increase, was a nice speed increase. So let's see in a few minutes how good the M2 Max does. All right, that's all done. Let's just take a look here at the time. It took 19 minutes and 43 seconds, so another 10% or so. Kind of what I expected with a lot of things. Photoshop's getting better, and I don't see the big jumps in the thing, but if you look at compared to the Mac Pro I bought 3 years ago, it's almost a 40% increase in speed. I mean, a lot of difference between 20 minutes and 30 minutes. So a couple other things we can tell, they actually give it a score, and we can take a look at that. The 2019 Mac Pro scored 784. Last year's M1 Max, 1084. Now higher is better. And I don't know what the numbers actually mean other than they're a reference to each other. And of course, these numbers won't really match a lot of the ones on their website because they were running a different version of it. But the 2023 M2 Max, as you can see here, got to 1350. So that's about a 15% benchmark improvement over last year's M1 Max. Nice gain. Photoshop is very brisk. Don't see a lot of problems with it. Let's take just a deeper dive into this. If you don't want to watch this, skip ahead. But some interesting things here. They break it down into 4 different scores. Here you want to see the difference: the GPU score, general score, the filter score, and especially the photo merge score. Notice that the photo merge score for the Mac Pro was 69 versus 170. Pretty big gains with Photoshop now that it's optimized and using native software. If you want to look at the individual tests, you can pause these and look at them. I think I wanted to point a few. Some of them are pretty significant. You'll notice that the paint bucket last year, the M1 Max, was actually slower than Photoshop. Now it's substantially faster. Take a look at the content-aware fill. 9 seconds for the Pro, 7.5 seconds for last year's model, and down to 4 seconds. Now, I do a lot of pretty extensive content-aware fill sometime, probably more extensive than this test, where it takes 10, 15, 20, 25 seconds. And I'm seeing almost almost twice as fast on the M2 Max with content-aware fill. The camera raw filter is something I also use a lot. I'll pull down and use the camera raw filter and apply all those things, and you'll notice it's almost, it's 10% faster and substantially faster than the Mac Pro was. The Magic Wand Select last year was a puzzle. The Magic Wand was kind of slow on last year's model. I don't know why, one of the kind of weaknesses, but now they fixed that. You can see that it's about, it does it in about a fourth of the time as last year's, and it's half the time. Lens correction tool is definitely faster, a little faster than last year. And most of them, you'll see that there's modest gains and some large gains. So Photoshop, definitely want to consider this. It's a pretty big upgrade, probably, depending on what machine you're running. The M1 Max was a pretty sweet machine too. Now, I'm kind of curious if the M1 or M2 Pro will be about the same as the M1 Max. I'm kind of suspecting that might be the case. So you can get in a machine equivalent to last year's M1 Max, which is a sweet machine even still, for a lot less money. Okay, for the last test, I mentioned I added a ScreenFlow test. I've run it on these 3 machines. This is a 30-minute ScreenFlow project, which consists strictly of HDMI capture from a 4K camera, my Sony A7r4. There's no screen capture on it, so I've got audio. All the audio goes through filters that are built into ScreenFlow. I actually use the Apple, their AU, I don't know what they're called, but Apple filters to kind of clean up the audio and stuff. So quite a bit going on. And when you compress that, you know, sometimes you've got 4 or 5 layers deep. Nothing as complicated as Final Cut Pro, but you know, it's when you compress that and spit it out to YouTube, it can take some time. So I wanted to see how that worked. And of course, the last 2 machines, the M1 Max, this is one where the Mac Pro actually did beat it pretty easily and by quite a bit. And I do a lot of ScreenFlow videos. So like a typical video, I'll compress 6 to 10 times before I finally have the version I'm willing to put up on YouTube. So, you know, when it's taken 10 to 15 minutes of video, that's quite a bit of time. So this is where it really helps. And of course, what I found was on the 2023 M2 Max, now I'm substantially faster than the old Mac Pro and about 30% faster than the M1 Max. So I think the video, handling of the video might be better with the M2 Max. I'm not sure why. I would assume that this would go across to any of the video programs like Final Cut Pro, etc. I'm actually going to run some tests with the compressor. Just curious. I won't put them into this video, but I thought it was a nice gain. So there's all of the tests. As you can see, if we want to add up the total time it took all of the tests, it took the Mac Pro a total of 1 hour and 4 minutes versus 59 for the last year's MacBook Pro. And this year now we're down to 47 minutes. So it's about a 25% overall boost from the M1 Max to the M2 Max. Well, that does it for the video. Hope it wasn't too long. I did put timestamps so you can find the parts you're interested in. I really am pleased with the machine. It's well designed. It'll be interesting to see where the M3 goes because they're going to use the 3 nanometer process. The battery life on this thing is amazing. I've gone for hours. I've been working on this video all day with this machine sitting here on the entire time, and it's still 50% battery. Other than that, the machines are pretty much the same. The sound to me, they sound the same. I know some people say that last year sounded a little better. Maybe it does, but this year sounds really good. Weight's the same, you know, everything pretty much is identical, other than the fact it's definitely running a little faster. Well, if you have any questions, let me know below. Anyway, hey, thanks for watching. See ya.